everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Le Castellet circuit in the south of France for the second race of the season for the International GTOpen. We're here for Ricard, the first of 7 stops for the 2015 campaign, and you join myself, Ben Evans, here on a beautiful day in the hills outside Toulon with a wonderful field of cars making their way to the grid ahead of this 60-minute race for the International GTOpen. If you didn't join us yesterday, the first race of the season was claimed by Alessandro Balzan and Nicola Bonucci in the Vallorba course Ferrari 458, despite a late race surge from the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren 650S of Alvaro Parent and Miguel Ramos. And it is Alvaro Parent, the former British Formula 3 champion, former Formula Renault 3.5 champion, who lines up in pole position in the McLaren. He and Miguel Ramos already making a very potent driver pairing, and Ramos, runner-up in the last 2 years in the championship, he would like to claim the title this year. Second on the grid is the AF Course Ferrari in the hands of Irishman Matt Griffin, who shares with Duncan Cameron, and Griffin and Cameron finishing in 5th place yesterday, but with Matt starting the race today, that car will fight strongly for the lead early on. Third on the grid, and third yesterday, is another of the AF Course Ferraris, this one for Passing the Thoras and Michele Rugolo. It is Michele Rugolo who starts the race before handing over to his Thai co-driver. Fourth on the grid is the new Cox Racing McLaren 650S in the hands of Peter Cox and Nico Pronk, and it is Peter who will be starting the race, who had great race pace yesterday as well, Peter Cox, so he should not be discounted. Fifth on the grid, a very warm welcome back to the International GTOpen for Kessel Racing and for Michael Brzezinski. This time, though, he is paired with Giacomo Piccini. They finished 4th yesterday, despite a little bit of a spin for Brzezinski after some assistance from Raffaele Giammaria. And it is the car that Giammaria will take over from Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac, which lines up 6th on the grid. And Perez-Compagnac, the Argentine driver, very strong on his GTOpen debut in race 1. Winner of the GTAM class yesterday, Ilya Melnikov and Claudio Tzanovic, they line up in 7th place, and Melnikov and Tzanovic in a rich vein of form. 8th on the grid, the Solaris Motorsport Corvette of Stefano Constantini and Francesco Cini, and it is Constantini who will be taking to the start today. That Corvette getting stronger as the race unfolded yesterday, and in particular Francesco Cini is going to be one to watch when he gets over the reigning Euro V8 champion. Another new car to the GTOpen this year is the AERT Lamborghini Gallardo of Anton Neblitsky and former champion Alvaro Barber, and it is Barber who will be starting. Somewhere down the grid then in 10th place for Nicola Bonucci in yesterday's victorious car, the Vallorba course Ferrari. And Alessandro Balzan then just passing on some last minute advice and good wishes to his co-driver, I think mainly saying stay out of trouble early on, keep the car in a good position, and then we'll see what we can do as the race unfolds. A couple of cars we've got question marks for as to whether they'll make it to the grid, being the Team Parker Racing Audi with a gearbox failure in yesterday's race, and also the Swiss team Maserati. Here, though, is the Peporo Motorsport Ferrari of Emiliano Lopez and Jose Perez Ricard. Emiliano Lopez didn't even get to race yesterday after a catastrophic suspension failure for Perez Ricard at the end of the first lap of the race, but that is a car which we will expect to see coming through very strongly as the race unfolds, particularly once Perez Ricard gets behind the wheel. And this is always a fantastically dynamic way of going racing in the International GTOpen, because what we've got is some very quick pro drivers at the front of the grid. Some of the gentleman drivers towards the second half of the grid, quick drivers, not quite on the pace of the pro drivers, but they have then got the pro driver to take over from them in the second half. So I think we can expect to see a race of fluctuating fortunes and order as it unfolds. So the grid being cleared, and then the cars will be released on their formation lap. It is one green flag formation lap, then the rolling start, 60 minutes of racing. Of course, there's the mandatory pit stop and driver change to look forward to. That will take place when the race is 24 minutes old, and the pit window will be open for 8 minutes or so. So the 1 minute sign is team told to start the engines, and last couple of mechanics just to clear away. So here is a look then at the grid. Front row, Alvaro Parent and Matt Griffin, very, very strong front row. Michele Rugolo and Peter Cox, two more formidable contenders. The third row of the grid, I think we're looking at consistent race pace for the Kessel Ferrari of Giacomo Piccini and the AF Corse Ferrari of Ezekiel Perez Kompanak, then Ilya Melnikov and Stefano Constantini on row 4. The fifth row, Alvaro Barber in the Lamborghini Gallardo, Nicola Benucci in the Villorba Corse Ferrari. Again, they could both feature later on. The Lecno Mercedes went very well yesterday with Walter Leclerc and Mario Placiuta. And the Paporo Ferrari should fly. Mauro Calamia and Ian Loggy. Question mark as to whether or not they will make it out, as the car's about to be released on their green flag lap, and away they go now. Absolutely magnificent. The sun beating down on these supercars. This is what the fans have come to enjoy today, and there was a queue at the circuit gates at about 8 o'clock this morning before they're open to the public for those wanting to come in and have a look up close at the cars, because I should say that if you are enjoying what you're seeing today, then if you want to come to a future round of the International GTOpen, then please do so. It's a very open and friendly paddock. The drivers are always very accessible to see in the pits, and paddock to talk to, sign autographs, tell you about their cars. And it's always great to see people out supporting the GTOpen into the AF Corse garage, and the teams watching the monitors. So you've never seen the GTOpen before. To explain, it's all GT3 cars in today's race, because the previous distinction of the Super GTs and the GTS cars as international GT racing has converged increasingly in Europe on the GT3 specification. That is now the sole type of car, but then what we have got is the class, which is the main GTS class, but then also the GT AM class, which is for where you've got combinations of 2 amateur drivers. A little bit concerned there that I'm not catching a glimpse of the Mercedes, so that is a real shame if the Lecna Racing Mercedes hasn't made it out to the grid as well. As the Teo Martin Motorsport garage readies itself for the race. The same for AF Corse. One of the very nice things about this Paul Ricard circuit is it is an absolutely state-of-the-art facility with the inbuilt office at the back of the pit boxes, enabling the mechanics to work with the space and environment they need, and likewise the team debriefing and engineers to work with the space and actually quiet that they need. So down at the Mistral straight, the car's just getting a little bit of heat into the control compound Michelin tyre, which they've all got to run. It's a change of tyre supplier for this year, and the Michelin tyre proving to be a big hit immediately with the drivers. They really are able to push with it and extract the maximum level of performance. So there on the left-hand side of your picture is Miguel Ramos, who will be taking over in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. As we were saying earlier on, Ramos, the past 2 years, he's finished second in the GTOpen Championship. He comfortably had the most wins last year when he was equipped with the Corvette, but mechanical failures caused some issues. So it's a switch of team and a switch of car for Miguel Ramos this year. And paired with Alvaro Parent, they are a very strong combination in terms of the championship challenge. They're shortly going to be forming up behind the pace car side by side. Then the race will be underway. 60 minutes, of course, mandatory pit stop that will come during the 8 minutes in the middle of the race. If you do want to get in touch with us and use Twitter, do so via hashtag GTOpen, and we will take a risk with mobile phone roaming charges and pick up your questions and comments during the course of the race today. So how can we expect the race to unfold? Well, I think we'll expect to see possibly Parent and Griffin beginning to break clear in the early stages. So we are just a couple of moments away from the start of the second race of the International GTOpen season. The Paul Ricard circuit in the south of France, absolutely wonderful day here as we are about to go racing for the second time this season. It's the Teo Martin Mercedes of Alvaro Parente on the front row of the grid alongside the AF Course Ferrari of Matt Griffin as we wait for the lights to change. It's a long hold. Still they wait, now they go, and the race is underway, and the field very nicely bunched as they sprint towards turn one. It's a good start from Peter Cox, who's trying to find the space in the second of the McLarens as they surge towards turn one. The pack are going to arrive pretty much almost as one. It's going to be very tight, and McLarens almost squeeze each other out. They all just about shuffle through, avoiding contact, but that was all very congested. It's been a good start from Stefano Constantini, particularly in the Solaris Corvette. So it's Parente who leads, Cox in second, third for Matt Griffin, fourth Michele Rugolo, fifth is Stefano Constantini, sixth Giacomo Piccini, seventh Ezequiel Perez Companac, and then in eighth place Emiliano Lopez. So it's Nicola Bonucci who has rather had the worst of that. He has been shuffled down the order, and a little bit of recovery work for him to do, as it is the McLaren 650S's flying in formation at the front of the field. Oh, and a problem for Alvaro Barber. And we thought it was maybe too good to be true. So Barber in the AERT Lamborghini encountering some trouble on the first lap. Hopefully he can get that car fired up and underway. Meanwhile, they all jink through the chicane, his way down the Mistral straight, pick up the power again, and onwards, and it's a good run for Giacomo Piccini. He's going to challenge Stefano Constantini, and it's a smile from Miguel Ramos, which rather suggests that he wishes the camera wasn't in the garage, as he watches nervously as Emiliano Lopez and compatriot Ezequiel Perez Companac go side by side into the Courbe de Seine. Peter Cox just running out a little bit wide. So Alvaro Parente trying to get the power down early on, and again Cox has a wayward moment. Is that going to play into the hands of Matt Griffin? I think it possibly might. Cox is still trying to gather it all up, and this is one of the characteristics we saw yesterday of the Michelin tyre, is that when it's a little bit cooler than its optimal operating temperature, it is a little bit of a handful to deal with. Demonstrated there by Peter Cox, but he does hold on to the position. Meanwhile, Ilya Melnikov looking to make progress. Oh, when he makes contact with Emiliano Lopez, and Lopez sprints around very nearly, takes Nicola Bonucci with him. Ilya Melnikov recovers as well, but I'm just worried that Melnikov may have picked up some damage and is heading pitward. And I think, would you believe, Emiliano Lopez is doing much the same as well. So we've got a few of them in trouble. Yeah, Ilya Melnikov has gone into the pits. Emiliano Lopez continues on his way as we focus on the battle for second position between Peter Cox, Matt Griffin and Michele Rugolo. Emiliano Lopez looking to the inside at Stefano Constantini. Not entirely convinced that Constantini was there, knew he was there, because the gap closed all a little bit abruptly, and there is the car of Ilya Melnikov. Dear, and you can see the damage to the front of the Ferrari. Hopefully he will be released to get back on his way. Good news is that Alvaro Barber has completed the first lap, and possibly that Volta Letna has left the pits as well. We'll find out. Well, that's the case, as down the Mistral straight, and Matt Griffin under a little bit of pressure from AF Course teammate Michele Rugolo. So it's the two McLarens and two Ferraris out front. And this battle for second place is just allowing Alvaro Parente to build a little bit of a buffer at the front of the field. Here's another look at the Melnikov and Lopez incident. Lopez, I'm not sure, was totally aware that Melnikov had committed, and it was a glancing blow, and Nicola Bonucci very, very lucky not to be caught up in that as well. So whether or not Melnikov emerges from the pits, we will find out in due course. Meanwhile, this second place battle is turning nice and feisty. And there is the answer. There is Ilya Melnikov explaining what went wrong to the mechanic. I think a far tougher conversation will be to his co-driver Claudio Shadanovic, particularly as they were well poised to win the amateur Griffin out over the curb, really pushing hard in these early stages behind Peter Cox. Then we've got Michele Rugolo, and they've all got to just be mindful not to let Alvaro Parent escape too far up the road. Already Nicola Bonucci, just after 2 laps, is 14 seconds back from the lead, and that is significant for when Alessandro Balzard takes over for the second half of the race. So out of the Virage d'École and on to the Mistral Straight for the leading gaggle of cars. Parent's advantage 1.7 seconds over Peter Cox. Cox then keeping the 2 Ferraris behind him. Matt Griffin contemplating a little bit of a nibble, maybe into the chicane. He's not quite close enough. And then you've got Michele Rugolo just in behind. Of course, Duncan Cameron takes over from Matt Griffin mid-race. Michele Rugolo, it's over to Passim Lathoras. And this is really what GT racing is all about, seeing these extremely prestigious marques going wheel to wheel on the track. Absolutely magnificent cars. So the Corbe du Scene into the Double Joie de Beausset, and again just probing all the while is Matt Griffin, but you can see the cars moving around. He's pushing as hard as he dares, but Peter Cox hasn't been one of the preeminent drivers in international sports car racing for the best part of 2 decades by being somebody that's easy to overtake. I'd imagine that Peter is busy thoroughly enjoying himself. He's going to make this as difficult as possible for Griffin. We also got notification of an incident involving car 3, Nicola Bonucci, and 16, Alvaro Barber. Under investigation as Griffin finds a space to the inside of Peter Cox and edges through. There's not a hole, though, that is big enough for Michele Rugolo to also take advantage of. But as they come across the line, Matt Griffin is now released to set off in pursuit of Alvaro Parent. Now, can he break clear of Peter Cox, or will Cox be able to fight back? It's kind of the big question, as Griffin, who was a single-seater contemporary of Lewis Hamilton in British Formula Renault racing before making the switch quite early in his career to GT racing, is now one of the first people you'd get on the phone if you were looking for somebody to drive a Ferrari quickly. And his long-established driving partnership with Duncan Cameron working very well. Peter Cox now under pressure from Michele Rugolo. That is bringing Giacomo Piccini into the scrap too. So we've got that wonderful 4-way fight going on for second place, although here's another look at the move from Griffin. Just a little hole to the inside of Peter Cox, and Cox unable to shut the door. Very nicely judged from Griffin. Now, can he break clear? Alvaro Parent, meanwhile, is metronomically reeling off fastest laps of the race, and Griffin just begin to break away from Peter Cox, who is coming under sustained pressure from Michele Rugolo. And Rugolo has got the black Kessel Ferrari of Giacomo Piccini just behind him. It's Ezekiel Perez-Compagnac in 6th, Stefano Constantini in 7th, Nicola Bonucci completing the top 8. It's Griffin just having to take it steady, and Griffin sets the fastest second sector of anybody in the race so far. Now, can he do anything about chasing down Alvaro Parent? That's going to be fascinating as the race unfolds. The fast lap of the race, though, as you can see, has gone the way of Giacomo Piccini, is again running out a little bit wide. With understeer is Peter Cox. That gives Michele Rugolo half an opening. It's not a full opening, and therefore Rugolo can't quite squeeze his way past, as they all, Constantine, are up on each other out of the Virage du Pont over the line. This is to complete the 4th lap of the race. Over the start and finish line and on towards turn 1, and Rugolo is somewhere there behind Peter Cox. He comes out of the bubble at the last minute. Michele Rugolo, brave on the brakes and goes through, snatches 3rd place. Beautifully judged manoeuvre from the Italian, and there was very little that Peter Cox could do about that. Clean, close and fair, and now Giacomo Piccini is the driver on the charge. In the meanwhile, Alvaro Parent clearly got the call on the radio to say that Piccini had set fastest lap, because he now sets the fastest lap of the race. As it's the turn of Piccini to the inside of Cox. He takes the corner marker with him as a souvenir, and he can't quite make the move stick. He's still hunting and sniffing to the inside, and that was very opportunistic, you would suggest, for Giacomo Piccini. And Peter Cox looking to close the door, and that was experience for you. That very easily could have been an extremely expensive error, as it was Cox gave Piccini just enough space to gather himself up and holds on to the position. As they jink through the chicane, midway down the Mistral straight, on towards the Courbe du Cygne. We are 10 minutes in to the second race of the season. Alvaro Parente is your race leader. Second place is Matt Griffin. Third is now Michele Rugolo. Fourth, Peter Cox. Fifth, Giacomo Piccini. And sixth, Ezequiel Perez-Compenac. Let's another look at it. That was a little bit too close for comfort, you'd suggest. Here we see it again, and the corner marker getting the worst of it. Here's the pass from Rugolo, absolutely consummately judged. Peter Cox left with no option but to follow in behind him. There is the inside of the Cox Racing garage. They're all fully focused on the monitors. Nico Pronk, the co-driver, about to take over. And the pit window will open when the clock has ticked down to 34 minutes remaining on it. So there's still, rather 36 minutes remaining on it, so there's still plenty of time for this to be settled out on track, as Giacomo Piccini, twice an Italian GT champion, has raced with great success a variety of GTs and sports cars in pursuit of Peter Cox, who once upon a time, back in 1989, was the Formula Opel Euro Series champion, which was pretty much the GP3 of its day, and then thereafter has moved on to great success in GT racing, probably the pinnacle of his career being a class victory in the GTS class in the Le Mans 24 Hours. And that past GT racing also took him via a factory drive in the British Touring Car Championship. Alvaro Parente is another driver who has had great success racing in the United Kingdom. He leads the way by 2.6 seconds from Matt Griffin. Michele Rugolo is in third, Peter Cox in fourth, just from Giacomo Piccini, and they've now broken away from Ezequiel Perez-Compenac to the tune of about 5 seconds. And in fact, Rugolo and Griffin just breaking clear of the Cox and Piccini battle. Our timing screen tells us, by the way, that the Villorba course team manager, Nicola Benucci, has been summoned to race control, and that was the spin we saw on the first lap for Alvaro Barber. It was under investigation. It would suggest that Barber rotated with a fair degree of assistance from Benucci, and Benucci currently in 8th place, 25 seconds pretty much away from Alvaro Parente, and that's important because the relative pace of Alessandro Balzan versus that of Miguel Ramos in the second half of the race, but a drive-through penalty would have a very significant bearing on proceedings. So Piccini just squirts the Kessel Ferrari out of the final turn. It really is one of those corners which feels desperately tight when you're there as a driver, and then the propulsion all the way along to the opening chicane, really fast change of direction. The car's balancing on the suspension, bouncing across the curbs, and Cox at the moment just withstanding what Piccini could throw to him. In the background there you can see Ezequiel Perez-Compenac, and he has got the very rapid Raffaele Giammaria to take over mid-race, and that car is still very much in contention given the pace of Giammaria, provided that Raffaele doesn't have one or two of those moments of overexcitement that somewhat plagued his performance yesterday. So along the Mistral straight, Alvaro Parente's advantage over Matt Griffin, only 2.5 seconds. Michele Rugolo in turn is only 1.2 seconds back from there, so Parente not shooting off into the distance. But I think for the second half of the race, Miguel Ramos probably a little bit quicker than Duncan Cameron. Miguel Ramos versus Passenger Thoras, though, is a battle to conjure with. Now there is yesterday's race winner, the Villorba course Ferrari of Nicola Benucci. Now will he be picking up a penalty? We await word from the pit lane. Stefano Constantini in 7th place in the Solaris Racing Corvette. Really nicely turned out car, and of course the Corvettes having had so much success in the International GTOpen over recent seasons. Race leader Alvaro Parente just trying to move away from Matt Griffin. Griffin has got an increasingly feisty Michele Rugolo trying to close the gap down onto his tail as we hit 1/4 race distance. We're at the conclusion of lap 7. The pit window opening in 9 minutes' time, and so that is going to make things very interesting. I think we can expect to see Alvaro probably staying out until the tail end of the pit window. The same for Matt Griffin and actually Michele Rugolo. The early pitters possibly be Ezequiel Perez-Companac, almost certainly Nicola Bonucci, and as well Emiliano Lopez, who's currently in 9th place in the Vapouro Ferrari, but he has got the extremely rapid Jose Perez Ricard to take over. Alvaro Barber, by the way, is back and running in the ART Lamborghini, which is showing no ill effects other than track position from that early spin. So this is probably the closest battle we've got on the track at the moment between Peter Cox and Giacomo Piccini for 4th place. Piccini, a couple of laps ago, was all over Cox's tail. Peter just seems to have been able to build a very slender buffer. And again, Peter Cox, we would anticipate, will stay out a little bit deeper into the pit window than others, but potentially. There is Miguel Ramos just readying himself, leaving absolutely nothing to chance for the TR Martin Motorsport team, because they'll have been practicing their pit stops through the course of the weekend. They'll have been practicing their pit stops as well during pre-season testing, because any time lost in the pits is very difficult to make up on the track, and that is something they don't want to happen. So they'll make sure that the pit stop runs as smoothly as it possibly can, and therefore everything prepared well in advance. Alvaro Prent still leading by 2.2 seconds from Matt Griffin. Griffin getting the hurry up a little bit due to the relative pace of Michele Rugolo, his AF Course teammate, tucked in behind him as they complete lap 8. And the advantage at the front of the field, in fact, comes down to under 2 seconds now. 1.9 seconds from Alvaro Prent back to Matt Griffin. Michele Rugolo just 0.6 of a second drift from there. There's an argument that possibly on race pace, Rugolo is just that fraction quicker than Griffin. It's hard to say, though, with the effect of the slipstream, because they've got a reasonably stern headwind down the Mistral straight, and that does help the car that's in the tow of the one in front. So, Michele Rugolo just poised behind Matt Griffin. The two AF Course teammates don't really want to tangle with each other, and they want to give their co-drivers, Duncan Cameron and Pascal Thoras, respectively, the best opportunity later on in the race. So we're 18 minutes in here, and it has been Alvaro Prent who has led from the outset as we approach 1/3 race distance. And of course, teammates flying in formation. Matt Griffin and Michele Rugolo in 2nd and 3rd place. In 4th, Peter Cox continues to withstand the pressure from Giacomo Piccini. In 6th, Ezequiel Perez-Companac, 15.5 seconds off the lead, but that could give a little bit of an opening to Rafael Maria. And here is the ART Lamborghini Gallardo. Alvaro Barber needs no introduction to fans in the International GT Open, the 2010 champion. Also won a race outright last year in the GTS car. That was the Ombra Ferrari Triumph at the Hungaro Ring. He is partnered with ex-Formula Renault 3.5 racer Anton Neblitsky, as Kladio Sadanovic and Ilya Melnikov watched the video Nasty, which was Melnikov's collision with Emiliano Lopez earlier on in the race. And you've got to feel sorry for Kladio Sadanovic, because the affable German absolutely loves his GT racing and will be bitterly disappointed not to have had a chance to race today. But he has got AF Course teammates to cheer on in the form of Griffin and Rugolo. Battle for 2nd place. Michele Rugolo is such a spectacular driver to watch. He always just seems to be on just the right side of riding the curbs always spectacular, but never overstepping the mark. Meanwhile, the fight for fourth has possibly closed up once more, because Giacomo Piccini and the Black Kessel Ferrari is onto the tail of the silver McLaren of Peter Cox. Peter, though, I think will be delighted with the way the car's performing so far, because, as you may well have read in the motoring press, he recently split with the Ricard Engineering Lamborghini squad, and having been at the forefront of the development of the racing versions of Lamborghinis for the best part of a decade, this is something of a move into the unknown for Peter, but he's got the McLaren sorted extremely quickly, and it's going very well. Battling toe-to-toe with the Ferrari 458, which is still the preeminent and benchmark car, you'd suggest, in international GT3 racing. Well, some of the professional drivers will tell you it's slightly harder to take to the limit than maybe some of the other marks of the Ferrari 458, but as for the drivers who are slightly less experienced in GT cars, the Ferrari is just so perfectly balanced. That said, the McLaren is super high-tech piece of machinery, and again, very much focused on stability, balance and handling. So the pit window opens in just 3 minutes' time. We're just over 1/3 race distance, and it is Alvaro Prent who leads in Paul Ricard. Prent's advantage has not really grown out much beyond 2 seconds. It's been fluctuating at the 1.9 to 2.2 second bracket throughout much of this stint, and what I suspect Alvaro is doing here, because he knows if he's out front, it gives Miguel Ramos a very good chance later on in the race, is conserving the Michelin tyres as much as he possibly can, and therefore leave them in as good a condition as possible for when Ramos takes over a little bit later on. You wouldn't discount the Kessel Racing Ferrari from this race either, would you? Because Michael Brozneski, we saw yesterday, the Polish driver, was running with front-running pace, and by the time the pit sequence has cycled through, and given Brozneski's pace, they will be reasonably well poised. The good news so far is that it would appear that Nicola Benucci has not picked up any sort of penalty for that collision with Alvaro Barber early on in the race. Benucci is 38 seconds off the lead. That's a big exam question for Alessandro Balzan when he takes over. But Balzan, we know, is extremely rapid, and so he may be able to race that car up into podium contention. So it's going to be towards the end of this lap that we may well see the pit window opening, and possibly the first couple of pit stops taking place as well. So this leading group of cars almost certainly won't be pitting in early on. The 6th place car of Ezequiel Perez Companac may. Ezequiel, who was last year's Ferrari Challenge Europe champion, staying with the Italian marque, making the step up to international multi-marque GT racing. As Peter Cox through the Double Joie de Beausset, under pressure from Giacomo Piccini, and both drivers absolutely on the limit of adhesion. But one of the characteristics of the conversion of the GT3 class is the balance of performance has been worked out extremely nicely between the different marques, and it actually makes overtaking quite tricky. There are some sections of the circuit where one car will be stronger than another, but you don't particularly have huge disparities in performance, and that can just make it a little bit tricky to find your way past your rival, particularly if you're racing with somebody like Peter Cox, who not only knows every trick in the book, he probably wrote 1 or 2 of them as well. So across the line, and we're into the 12th lap of the race. Still Michele Rugolo, tucked up behind Matt Griffin. He must be thoroughly sick of the sight of Griffin's rear spoiler in the battle for second position. But for the AF Course drivers, this is very much job done. They've kept the race leader in sight. They have also kept their cars out of trouble. We'll be handing over to their co-drivers, giving them every opportunity to fight for a podium position in the second half of the race. So the driver change is now on. It'll be interesting to see who elects to duck into the pits quite early as Piccini and Cox accelerate on the Mistral Straight. Just wonder whether or not the Kessel team might make the call. Giacomo Piccini spring him in and out of the dirty air behind the car of Peter Cox. You suspect that Piccini, if he was in clear air, would be able to go a little bit quicker than the McLaren. As it is, There's a question mark as to how much benefit he's getting. That said, lapping in the 2-minute 7.8 bracket. That compares to a 2-minute 6.8 last time around for Alvaro Perent, and a 2 minutes 7.4 for Matt Griffin. Another driver who's going well, not quite at the same pace, but having just done his personal best lap of the race, is Stefano Constantini. So the Solaris Corvette, in the way that it did yesterday, is really coming to them in terms of the way that the car is consistent and performs over the course of the hour. So Alvaro Perent not having to rely on the spectaculars he did yesterday. It was a 2 minutes 4.8, which was his fastest lap yesterday afternoon. And in fact, Alvaro ducks into the pits now to hand over to Miguel Ramos. So Miguel will be getting the balance of the race at the wheel of the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. Alvaro Perent has done exactly what he needs to do. The car comes to a halt. And in jumps Miguel Ramos. Alvaro Perent gets to work strapping him in, so that promotes Matt Griffin then to the lead of the race. And Griffin still with Michele Rugolo just up behind him. And Rugolo trying to close the gap down. Also in, as we rather surmised might be the case, is Ezequiel Perez Companac to hand over to Raffaele Giammaria. And you'll see with the different handicap segment times, the minimum pit stop time is 70 seconds. And of course, it's 5 seconds for the car that finished third yesterday, 10 additional seconds for the car that was second, and 15 for this car, the race winner, Nicola Benucci and Alessandro Balzan. So that's why it's 10 seconds more for Miguel Ramos in the pits. And an 85-second pit stop for Benucci and Balzan. So a big task for them. Another early pit stop is Emilio Lopez to hand over to Jose Perez Icar. Again, no surprise there. Perez Icar, one of the stars last year in the International GTOpen, as Miguel Ramos emerges from the pit lane. And here comes Raffaele Giammaria just behind him. So Ramos is going to be in a good position as this race unfolds. I think probably once the pit stops are through, it's going to be Duncan Cameron who will emerge in the lead of the race, but then it is going to be dependent on the pace of some of those around. So Alvaro Perent waves to the camera, thumbs up. Probably quite hot work at the wheel of the McLaren, and there, a lovely shot into the cockpit as Miguel Ramos, just a quick little correction. Again, just the second the heat goes out of those Michelin tyres, they do become a little bit of a handful. Well, Griffin and Rugolo continue onward. They fly in formation. This is going to be an absolutely fascinating conclusion to the race, because by the time this has worked through, my guess is that Duncan Cameron's going to be leading by about 10 seconds from either Miguel Ramos or passing the Thoras, and they're going to have Raffaele Giammaria snapping on their heels. We shouldn't discount this man, Alessandro Balzan, and Balzan has actually come out of the pits probably exactly where he didn't want to. He's been fed into the turbulent air behind two very quick sister Ferraris. There is passing the Thoras. Thumbs up from the extremely amiable driver from Thailand, who's another driver who's made the switch to GT racing quite early in his career, having campaigned for a couple of seasons in Formula BMW cars in the various Asian championships. Was formed in Formula BMW Asia, then became JK Asia, for those of you who wish to fill out your anoraks. As Michele Rugolo is not really asking the questions about Griffin, but they're pushing themselves along, and Balzan just wants the clear air. So a pit stop here for Rugolo to hand over to the Thoras would be very good news for Balzan potentially. So of those that have pitted, it's Ramos who is at the head of that queue from Giammaria. As into the pits comes Alvaro Barber. Anton Neblitsky opens the door of the Lamborghini Gallardo. Barber was pretty much out of the car before the door was open. And Ramos has got 10 seconds worth of advantage over Raffaele Giammaria, as the two AF Corse Ferraris fly in formation at the front of the field. We are just about at half race distance. The pit change is underway, but it's Matt Griffin who leads from Michele Rugolo and Peter Cox. Now, will Rugolo come in at the conclusion of this 14th lap of the race? No, he doesn't. They're going to go for at least another spin of the wheel. Sandro Balzan just sitting in behind them. And into the pit lane, though, does go Giacomo Piccini in the Kessel Ferrari. That's going to be Michael Brozanevsky, who takes over for pretty much exactly half of the race. So to a halt, Kessel pit box, and out gets Piccini, in goes Brozanevsky. And so we've only got 5 cars that haven't pitted: Griffin, Rugolo, Cox and Constantini. And here are the 2 AF Course Ferraris. They've got the luxury probably for another, certainly 1 more lap, maybe 2 more laps. They really want to take the risk. So there is Piccini. I think he'll be reasonably satisfied with that stint, maybe frustrated with the traffic, as Stefano Constantini hands over to Francesco Cini. And Cini, a really enticing prospect for this year. Last year's Euro V8 champion. He's been racing in Superstars as well for some of the preceding years, and was the Radical European Masters champion going back 6 or 7 years ago. So he's used to these longer endurance races and the driving techniques required through Courbe du Sine. Hurtle the 2 AF Course Ferraris. Don't forget, with a view towards the pit handicap, Griffin and Cameron have got 5 seconds less than Rugolo and Lathoris because they didn't finish on the podium yesterday. So Matt Griffin knows that, all things being equal through the pit stops, Duncan Cameron will be fed out with a 5-second advantage over passing Lathoris to try and break down. Meanwhile, this could be fun. Michael Brozanevsky has fed out of the pits just ahead of Miguel Ramos. So this is the battle essentially for the lead of the race amongst the cars that have pitted, and Ramos does not want to get delayed here behind Brozanevsky, and with a very good reason, which is that 8 seconds behind this battle, Raffaele Giammaria is closing on the pair of them at a rate of 2 seconds a lap. So this is what we were hoping for. The Kessel Ferrari of Brozanevsky at the front of the field, the 42-year-old Polish driver ahead of the 43-year-old Portuguese Miguel Ramos. So they're on the brakes, snicking down through the gear shift, working through the chicane as Matt Griffin high-fives the mechanic, and a handshake as Duncan Cameron gets strapped in to the AF Course Ferrari. And that car, while static in the pit lane, is racing these cars out on the far side of the circuit, and the race really coming alive as Ramos looks for the brave one to the inside of Brozanevsky, and Michael having absolutely none of it. And all the while, though, Raffaele Giammaria is closing in very, very rapidly onto this scrap. So that is going to be very interesting to see the way in which it unfolds. Michele Rugolo, as far as I can tell from the timing screen, has continued on for another lap. Maybe just to see what his ultimate pace is without being bottled up behind Matt Griffin before handing over to passing Lathoris. So a race that was maybe a little bit stable during the first half is set for an absolute grandstand finish. So out of the Virage de la Tour come the duo of Michael Brozanevsky and Miguel Ramos. Now, where are they in relation to Duncan Cameron? That is the big question. We'll probably find out at the end of this lap. And the lap time from Brozanevsky and Ramos, it was a 2:10 versus a 2:08 from Giammaria. So Giammaria is still catching them to the tune of 2 seconds lap. There is Raffaele Giammaria at the back of your picture, and Miguel Ramos, if he can, needs to make this move fairly rapidly. And this group of cars, by the way, they are behind Duncan Cameron, who has emerged from the pits. And has emerged from the pits with a reasonably healthy advantage over the pair of them. I suspect that what we'll probably see is passing Lathoris, also feeding out into the gap between Cameron, and this battle between Brozanevsky and Ramos. But Miguel Ramos has got a good run here on Michael Brozanevsky down to the chicane along the back straight. Ramos comes out of the slipstream and jinks to the inside. Can he get the McLaren stopped in time? Yes, he can, and Ramos gains the place, and that could be very significant for the remainder of the race. Into the pit lane, meanwhile, is Michele Rugolo to hand over to passing Lathoris. Lathoris being strapped in And that 70-second pit stop will feel like an eternity. Just given the track position of the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren, though, you would suspect Lothoris is going to emerge ahead of Miguel Ramos. Oh, this is going to be a wonderful conclusion to the race. At the end of this lap as well, we'll find the advantage. There's a problem there for Miguel Ramos running wide. We have another look at the overtaking manoeuvre on Brzezinski, which was Ramos's triumph for the lap, but he made a big mistake and has recovered with some aplomb, but he's understeering quite badly, and immediately he's got the Polish driver all over his tail. Duncan Cameron, meanwhile, has just gone over the start and finish line, and there is Cameron, who just takes the advantage from passing Lothoris. So they are effectively the race leaders. In third place, it's going to be Nico Pronk who emerges from the pits, and this is the fight for fourth position. And this promises to be a truly wonderful scrap. Ramos and Brzezinski are 12 seconds behind Duncan Cameron. It's really going to be next time around that we get a true sense of everybody's pace. There is Nico Pronk being very cautious coming out of the pits. I hope there's not a problem there, in fact, with the McLaren. It almost appears as if it's accidentally gone into limp home mode. Everybody completing their driver change within the allotted window. That window has now shut, and so it's all to be sorted on the track. Here is Ramos's moment. We just saw it to that point, runs out a little bit wide. Allow Brzezinski to draw alongside Ramos, getting his elbows out though to assert his right to the position. Fastest driver on the track, by the way, is currently Jose Perez Ricard in 7th place. So here is our race leader, Duncan Cameron. And Duncan, who has won races outright, of course, in the International GTOpen before. He had 3 wins in the 2013 season. Had 1 GTS class victory last year, but he's now got passing Lothoris right up behind him. So the 2 AF course cars pretty much exactly as they were. Lothoris maybe a little bit quicker than Duncan Cameron, but Duncan, in with a sniff of a race win here, is going to be loath to allow Lothoris through if he absolutely has to. The problem being that if the pair of them squabble too much amongst themselves, they're only 12 seconds up the road from Miguel Ramos, and they have got Gia Maria only about 4 seconds behind that, who will also be closing the gap down. So there is Michele Rugolo looking to cheer on, passing Lothoris, who makes the move for the lead of the race as they sprint along the start and finish straight. As they head over the start and finish line, though, it's Cameron who's got the advantage and the inside line for turn 1. Lothoris, you wonder, might be prepared to brake a little bit later. Cameron wants to fight it, but Lothoris attempts to swoop through. Does he run out of road? No, he doesn't. And passing Lothoris takes the lead of the race away from teammate Duncan Cameron. Cameron, though, looking to fight back. He draws alongside once more. But Lothoris possibly a little bit more committed on the brakes. Swoops through and takes the lead. Their advantage over Miguel Ramos, though, is only 8.9 seconds. In 4th place, it's Brzezinski. In 5th place, it's Raffaele Gia Maria. And Gia Maria, for the record, is a good 2 seconds quicker than all the cars that he's chasing. And 2 seconds faster than that again in 6th position is Jose Perez Ricard. But Perez Ricard, at 36 seconds off lead the race, is probably going to run out of time. There's the confirmation that Perez Ricard has just set the fastest lap of the race with a 2 minutes 6.244. So now can Duncan Cameron stay with passing Lothoris and keep him under pressure? Right, through the first sector, it was a 37.0 for passing Lothoris. It was a 35.9 for Miguel Ramos, so 1.1 seconds faster just through Sector 1. Sector 2 for passing, a 38.7, a 38.2 for Ramos. That gap is chipping down. In comparison, for Gia Maria, it was a 35.6 and a 38.3. So we have another look at the battle for lead of the race. This was the decisive manoeuvre. Cameron tried to cover the inside line, but Lothoris was able to use the slightly less acute angle of turn into his advantage, carried more momentum, and therefore got the place. Thumbs up from Michele Rugolo. It's been a long time since Michele has won a race outright in the International GTOpen. Very talented driver. And this year it's good to see him as well paired with Passin Thoras, who is plenty fast enough in his own right. So 20 minutes to go. We're at 2/3 race distance. Passin Thoras leads by 2.1 seconds from Duncan Cameron. In third place and just 6 seconds off the lead is Miguel Ramos. Fourth is Michael Brozanevsky. He's 9 seconds back. And fifth is Raffaele Giammaria, 10 seconds off the lead. And Giammaria is right up onto the tail of Michael Brozanevsky in the fight for 4th and 5th position. You can just see them at the back of your picture. So we've got the McLaren sandwiched by the 4 Ferraris. In 6th place is Jose Perez Ricard. 7th place Francesco Cini. 8th is Alessandro Balzan. So here is Perez Ricard on a bit of a flyer, 31 seconds off the lead of the race, but he's 3 seconds a lap quicker than Passin Thoras. So it is just possible that Perez Ricard may be in a position to challenge at the very end of the race. There's Alessandro Balzan. He's moved clear of Francesco Cini. Balzan 45 seconds off the lead. Unlikely that he's going to progress, but the extent to which he progresses remains to be seen. They're coming up to put a lap on Nico Pronk, who unfortunately had to make a return trip to the pits. He came out at that low speed, and Nico doing the right thing, staying well out of the way. As Balzan gets the power down, the battle I think that we probably need to be focusing on is the one for 4th and 5th position. The number 11 car, Michael Brozanevsky, being caught by the similarly black Ferrari, number 90 of Raffaele Giammaria. Sandro Balzan, though, yesterday's race winner, flying in the Vallorba course Ferrari. There's a little bit of a wobble there through the chicane. Balzan 13 seconds back from Jose Perez Ricard. So it's going to be several laps before we see that capture. Meanwhile, here is the fight between Giammaria and Brozanevsky, and this is important because Raffaele Giammaria, of the drivers within touching distance of the lead of the race, is quite comfortably the quickest. If you can find a way past Brozanevsky, as you can see, Duncan Cameron and Miguel Ramos are not far ahead up the road. Giammaria tucked right in the slipstream behind Brozanevsky as they accelerate towards turn 1. Giammaria chances are, he pulls out of the slipstream very late. Can he get the car stopped in time? Certainly looks like it. He might run out a little bit wide, but he shuts the door on Brozanevsky and goes through into 4th position. So Raffaele Giammaria gains the position, and this is going to be both cause for celebration and anxiety for the AF Course team, because although it's a very differently coloured car, Raffaele Giammaria is teammate to the race leader, Passin Thoras, and Thoras is still being caught at about a rate of 1.5 seconds a lap by Miguel Ramos. And Ramos is almost on since Duncan Cameron. Here's another look then at the pass from Giammaria. Giammaria squirming on the brakes, lets the car run out and completes the block pass manoeuvre on Brozanevsky. Here is Miguel Ramos, who has already reeled in Duncan Cameron. He started the lap 1.6 seconds behind Duncan, and it's a little bit less than that. Here's our race leader, Passin Thoras, and Thoras is, on this lap, actually matching Miguel Ramos stride for stride. So Ramos not having such a strong lap. It's not really closing on Duncan Cameron quite as quickly as maybe we thought he may. Also, Ramos has got the luxury of a little bit of time in his pocket. He doesn't need to take any undue risks in terms of finding a way past Duncan Cameron. The concern for Ramos will surely be, though, the progress of Giammaria, as Ramos lining up, attempting to line up the move on Duncan Cameron. He's just got to find either a way to pressurise Cameron into a mistake or to pick the moment in one of the more conventional overtaking spots. Neither driver particularly wants to risk the car when championship points are on offer. It's been a good lap from Passin Thoras, so 2 minutes 9.5, which will be to the light of the AF Course team. Across the line, Flash, Cameron and Ramos, with a 2 minutes 11 and 2 minutes 9 respectively. And Ramos not quite able to commit to the move around the outside of Duncan Cameron. That's good defensive driving from Cameron. Ramos then looks to fight for the switch back to the inside as Cameron runs out wide, and surely Ramos will find a way through now. Cameron still keeps his foot in, but Miguel Ramos moves up into 2nd position. smiles for the Tio Martin Motorsport team. And now, what can Miguel Ramos do about reeling in passing the Thoras? Let's cast our minds back 24 hours when Ramos was able to build a good advantage over the Thoras in the early stages of the first race of the weekend, and he now needs to draw deeply on how much grip he's got left in his tyres. But Raffaele Giammaria is still closing in on both of them. And Giammaria also a good half a second a lap quicker as well last time through than passing the Thoras. So the leading 4 cars separated by just 8.4 seconds. We have another look at Ramos going for the switchback on Duncan Cameron. Cameron running out wide over the curbs. Another look at it, and there we go. Smiles for the Tio Martin Motorsport team. They'd really like to leave Paul Ricard with a victory. It's already Raffaele Giammaria taking his turn on the sister AF Course Ferrari of Duncan Cameron. And Cameron fighting here for the final spot on the podium. It's not going to make this easy for Raffaele Giammaria. At the same time, Giammaria, former podium finisher in the Monaco Formula 3000 race. Before, again, like so many drivers, as his single-seater career petered out, moving on to sports cars. Might be hanging out to dry here behind Cameron. He looks to try and perfect the switchback. Cameron defending well, though, through the final turn on the 21st lap of the race. Giammaria now trying to find the space to the inside to pass his teammate Duncan Cameron. Cameron gives him a little bit of space. Giammaria should go through and make this stick as they go into the opening sequence of corners. Indeed, he does. So Giammaria up into 3rd position. Next driver to try and challenge Duncan Cameron is going to be Michael Brzezinski. It's also probably worth alerting you to in 6th place, with the benefit of some clear air. Jose Perez Ricard is 3 seconds a lap quicker than our race leader passing the Thoras. So I think that Perez Ricard may run out of laps, but he's going to make it pretty close by the end of the race. So the leading trio all the way along the Mulsanne straight, but crucially the 3 leaders are all converging in on each other, although the Thoras last time round actually matching Miguel Ramos for pace, and so far through the first sector of this lap it has been much the same story. Giammaria having a slightly slower lap last time through as well, because he was tucked in behind Duncan Cameron. Giammaria through sector 2, 4/10ths of a second faster than the race leader, so he's half a second up on the Thoras thus far on this lap, but 8 seconds back, that might not be enough. He needs to get himself back into the 2-minute 6, 2-minute 7 second bracket he was running in a little bit earlier on, and that is where Perez Ricard and Balzan are currently competing. Meanwhile, Duncan Cameron just slipping into the clutches of Michael Brzezinski in the fight for 4th position. And if that move works out, then those 2 cars will actually finish in exactly the same places that they finished yesterday's race. So Duncan Cameron accelerating out of the final turn. Meanwhile, the Thoras has come through with a 2 minutes 9.4. Miguel Ramos a 2 minutes 8.7. So he brings the gap down, and Raffaele Giammaria a 2 minutes 8.1, so 1.4 seconds quicker was Giammaria that last time through. That might not be enough. What about Jose Perez Ricard, a 2 minutes 7.0? Perez Ricard 20 seconds off the lead of the race with 11 minutes to go. What that really means is that Perez Ricard needs to be 2 seconds a minute rather than 2 seconds a lap faster. So he's pushing as hard as he dares in the Papora Motorsport car. As you can see, he is reeling in Brzezinski with quite some rapidity, so I think 4th place is on the cards for Perez Ricard. Much more than that, and becomes a slightly different proposition. Meanwhile, through sector 1, here is our race leader, the Thoras, a 35.8, as well for Miguel Ramos, a 35.5 for Raffaele Giammaria. Then we've got the Brzezinski and Duncan Cameron battle. They're a little bit slower, but Duncan Cameron doing a good job of keeping Brzezinski behind him. As they ride through the chicane, accelerating onward towards the Courbe du Sine. Through sector 2, and Miguel Ramos half a second quicker than passing the Thoras through the second sector, but really we need over the course of a lap Ramos to be a good second quicker than the Thoras. That's when it starts to become very interesting. Brzezinski, like Duncan Cameron, a very accomplished gentleman driver, experienced at this level of competition. He almost sees an opening to the inside of Duncan Cameron. He tries to force the crack in the door a little bit wider. Cameron, though, getting his elbows out, more than getting his elbows out, they almost make contact, the pair of them, as they come towards the conclusion of the lap, and Brzezinski now forces the error from Cameron, who runs a little bit wide. Cameron, though, will have the inside line, but he can't brake steeply enough, and Michael Brzezinski up into 4th place. He guns the throttle nice and early, flicks the car sideways, and across the line they come. At the front of the race, passing the Thoras, has upped his pace to 2 minutes 8.9 versus 2 minutes 8.2 from Ramos, a 2 minutes 7.6 from Gia Maria. So the leading 3 cars separated by 6 seconds. Here comes Jose Perez Ricard with a 2 minutes 7.3 last time round. Perez Ricard, as you can see, 4 seconds quicker than Duncan Cameron last time through. So Michael Brzezinski may be struggling to get much further up than 4th position. Duncan Cameron, I think, will do well to maintain 5th through to the checkered flag. The real question, though, is what has passing the Thoras got in the tank, because 6.4 seconds with 8.5 minutes to go to cover the leading group of cars, but through the first sector, absolutely nothing to choose between the leading trio of cars. Duncan Cameron, if he can stay with Brzezinski, may just leave him a little bit immune to the challenge being offered up by Jose Perez Ricard. The leaders, though, this time around, they've all done pretty much identical sector times, so the 6.4 seconds isn't particularly closing one way or another. Fastest lap of the race in the hands of Jose Perez Ricard, 2 minutes 6.2, still compares, by the way, to a fastest lap we had yesterday of a 2 minutes 4.8. It's Cameron in 5th. He has got Perez Ricard homing in on his tail. They're on the 24th lap of the race, 7.5 minutes to go. There's Perez Ricard, there he is, Duncan Cameron. His pace, meanwhile, passing the Thoras, is over the line with a 2 minutes 8.6. It was a 2 minutes 8.5 for Ramos, 2 minutes 8.0 for Raffaele Gia Maria. So 5.8 seconds is now the coverage for the leading group. Here is Alessandro Balzan in 7th place. Balzan lapping metronomically in the 2 minute 7 second bracket. He is far too far back, I think, to challenge for anything more than 7th, unfortunately. Yesterday's race winner. And with the additional 15 seconds in the pits, plus Bonucci getting a little bit caught up in some of the early tangles, that has left him with a significant amount of ground to make up. He's recovered strongly, but maybe not quite got as far as he would have liked. So 6.5 minutes to go, and passing the Thoras seemingly has managed his Michelin tyres to perfection. So while we watch Balzan at the front of the field, the Thoras has done a much faster first sector. These were the 2 cars trying to chase him down. There's Jose Perez Ricard. Headlights are flashing, and knowing Jose will probably go for the move. He looks to the inside. Duncan Cameron realises that's probably just a little bit too far to go, but instead Cameron gets slightly crossed up, turning through the chicane, and that's going to give Ricard the opportunity to make that move stick as they head along the Mistral straight on towards Courbe du Sine. Cameron, headlights ablaze. Just a little look to the inside there, Jose Perez Ricard. There's nothing in terms of space. Cameron just runs slightly wide. It's a momentary error, but Duncan Cameron does very well to almost close the door into Double Joie de Beausset. He can't quite close it in time, and Perez Ricard, as a result, sneaks past and up into 5th position. Ricard absolutely flying in these latter stages of the race. Another look at it. By the time that Cameron was moving across to shut the door, Ricard had sufficiently drawn alongside. Here, meanwhile, is the battle for 2nd and 3rd position, because Rafael Gianmaria has caught Miguel Ramos, and Ramos has had a fairly wretched lap, 2 minutes 9.9. It has all but handed race victory to Passing the Thoras with 3 or 4 laps remaining, and certainly if Gianmaria can't find a way past rapidly. Meanwhile, Ricard already on terms with Michael Brozneski, the Kessel Ferrari, defending doggedly from the Baboro car. Ricard swarming all over his tail, just the poise. And again, now where do you look? This battle's all come together late on. Very defensive from Ramos. Brozneski leaves it too late to mount a defence, and up into 4th place for Jose Ricard. Ricard is still a good couple of seconds a lap quicker than the cars in front of him. He's got a little bit too much of an arse, possibly, to close that gap down in time. Meanwhile, Rafael Gianmaria in pursuit of Miguel Ramos down the Mistral straight, and Gianmaria was lining up for the move on Ramos. Instead, what he does is forces Ramos to slightly more defensive mode through the chicane, but Ramos doing well to block out the racing line, as a result forcing Gianmaria to get off the throttle, so that pair of them hurtling on towards the Courbe du Cygne, the heat haze shimmering off the surface of the circuit. Through the right-hander. Miguel Ramos is always a tough man to overtake. I think particularly back to 2012 when we went to the Hungaro ring, and that absolutely magnificent defensive performance from Miguel Ramos en route to victory. Again, Ramos just running out a little bit wide. He doesn't leave the door open. This is very, very good news for Passing the Thoras and Michele Rugolo, because as the battle for 2nd place winds up, the Thoras about to embark on the penultimate lap of the race is leaving enough of an advantage that it's going to be all but impossible for Gianmaria to close it down if and when he can find a way past Miguel Ramos. Ramos, meanwhile, would like to make it 2 second places for the weekend, but Gianmaria not in a position to challenge. They may just be slightly mindful of the progress of Ricard, which is still substantially quicker. Ricard is 9.6 seconds back. Can whittle away the Teo Martin Motorsport team on the radio to Miguel Ramos. I'm sure there's really too much in the way of instruction that needs passing on, other than don't wreck the car, but do what you can to hold on to your position. Ramos drawing all this experience. You can see there he was defending into a corner where the exit wasn't critical. He just had to get the tight inside line, and then he takes the much more conventional racing line out of the Virage d'École on to the Mistral straight. Yeah, of course, team consulting their monitor. Looks like it could be a very good day for them, with 1st and 3rd place almost certainly in the bag, potentially an outright 1-2, depending on whether or not Rafael Gianmaria can find a way to overhaul his former driving partner, Miguel Ramos. So they both know each other's driving characteristics very well. Well, here is a replay of Michael Brozneski having a problem, and is that, oh dear, yes, it's a tyre issue on the rear right, so Brozneski in trouble very late on. Brozneski possibly grinding to a halt and into retirement. Very disappointing for Brozneski and the Kessel Racing team. Good news for Alessandro Balzan. That should give him 6th position and a couple more championship points. Passing the Thoras is about to embark on the 28th and last lap of the race. With the battle raging for 2nd place behind him, the Thoras has done enough to maintain that buffer. Meanwhile, Gianmaria just doesn't maybe have enough left underneath him to really challenge Miguel Ramos, and the gap between the pair of them goes out to almost a second heading into the final lap. Now, is that a case of Gianmaria just gathering himself for one final surge? Meanwhile, passing the Thoras into the traffic, that's Nico Pronk, who he needs to put the lap on. Has Nico seen him? Yes, he has. Passing the Thoras, who finished 7th in last year's British GT Championship. He was the Ferrari Asia Pacific champion the year before that. And now he is well set, having already won a GTS class win in the GTOpen last year in Spa. He is on course to score an outright race victory in the International GTOpen. He has got just half a lap remaining here at Paul Ricard along the Mistral Straight. Headlights ablaze. It was a great drive from Michele Rugolo early on in the race, but Thoras has then run very consistently in the second half of the race. He has not allowed those behind to challenge him. Miguel Ramos, likewise, looks like he is going to maintain second position, with Raffaele Gianmaria having pushed so hard to close up into the podium positions, unable to move much further than that. So through the Courbe du Sine for the final time for passing the Thoras on the brakes and into the Double Droit de Beausset. He's just got about 1.5 kilometres of asphalt between now and the checkered flag for Theo Martin Motorsport. Well, it's there. It's the home race for both Ramos and Perent next to him out in Estoril, but they are set for 2 second-place finishes on their debut weekend with the McLaren 650S in Paul Ricard. It's been a great weekend of racing to get the International GTOpen season underway for 2015, and victory in the second race of the year is going to go to AF Corse Ferrari, passing the Thoras and Michele Rugolo. It's the Thoras who accelerates through, takes the checker flag, celebrates with the team on the pit wall. Second place is claimed by Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Perent once more, and Raffaele Gianmaria and Ezequiel Perez-Companac completing the podium. Fourth after a charging drive to Jose Perez Ricard and Emiliano Lopez. And are we going to see a last lap change for fifth? Because Alessandro Balzan has caught Duncan Cameron as they sprint towards the line, but fifth is claimed for Cameron and Griffin. Balzan and Bonucci in 6th place. Francesco Cini and Stefano Constantini should take 7th. So congratulations amongst the AF Corse team. And the same for Theo Martin Motorsport. McLaren having a very impressive GTOpen debut this weekend. Very happy team and driver. So that leaves them very strongly poised for the championship. Sebastian Thoras waving to the marshals on his way round to Parc Fermé. It's a great drive from the Thoras and as well from Michele Rugolo early on. Both McLaren 650Ss showing very strongly this weekend. Peter Cox, of course, right in the thick of the action early on in the race, and then slight problems for Nico Pronk a little bit later. And Miguel Ramos just taking his time to head back to Parc Fermé. The crowd applaud as we take a look at the final classification. So the win for the Thoras and Rugolo, 3.5 seconds, the advantage over Ramos and Perent. Then it is Raffaele Gianmaria and Ezequiel Perez-Companac who complete the rostrum. Great drive from Jose Perez Ricard alongside Emiliano Lopez for 4th place and fastest lap of the race as well to Perez Ricard. 5th once more for Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin. 6th yesterday's winner, the Vallorba Course duo of Balzan and Bonucci. 7th for the Solaris Motorsport Corvette of Cini and Constantini. Tom Neblitsky and Alvaro Barber in 8th. So in terms of the championship, well, what more could you want? A tie at the top between Rugolo and the Thoras, and Perent and Ramos, with Bonucci and Balzan just 10 points back. Everything to race for in a fortnight's time in Estoril. Into Parc Fermé then for victors from second race of the GTOpen season. Very happy. Michele Rugolo just debriefing the tyre performance with Michelin. That's really the sign of a top professional driver. Even though he's won, there's still improvements to considered. doors open, cars parked up in Parc Fermé. Raffaele Gianmaria says congratulations. So does Passim Lathoras. Thumbs up, number 1. He says, receives the congratulations of the team, his family, co-driver Michele Rugolo. And a day to celebrate for the AF Course Ferrari team. Raffaele Gianmaria drove supremely well, as we thought he might. And he and Ezekiel Perez-Compenac, certainly a combination to consider for the championship this season. Quick drivers, and we have had a very high quality of competition this weekend in the International GTOpen. Paul Ricard, the good news is that we have got several more cars already confirmed to be joining us in Estoril in a fortnight's time, so the grid may well be a bit bigger. But the level of competition has been truly intense. We are set for a fantastic championship battle this year. We've just had 2 of the 14 races under our belt.
First win for Michele Rugolo and Passim Lathoras after a very nice weekend. Michele, you must be happy.
I'm really happy, even because at the beginning of the weekend we were a little bit in trouble with the setup. We had some issues with the ABS, and then at the end we worked little by little with our engineer, with all the stuff from AF Course. And I think at the end our car was super competitive.
Passim very strong throughout the weekend, and now I think also leader in the championship.
So thank you. Yeah, it's a tough one. As Michele said, we had quite a tough start for the practice, but for the first race I had really tough first stint, and then Michele did a really good job for both races. Second race he made it a lot easier for me. It was just a really good weekend. Thank you for the AF Course team. You guys did a really good job. And we're just looking forward to the next round now.
Good. Well done, guys. Podium now. Thank you.
Let's take a look back then at the highlights of a thoroughly entertaining race as it got underway. It was Alvaro Perez from pole position who was able to best Matt Griffin as they raced towards turn 1, with Peter Cox also able to sneak through in the second of the McLarens into second position. Somehow they all made it through, more or less in one piece, although Alvaro Barber was tipped into a spin. There was also contact with Ilya Melnikov, rotating Emiliano Lopez. Thereafter, there was some brilliant fighting for second position, as Griffin was eventually able to find a way ahead of Peter Cox, and shortly afterwards, Michele Rugolo doing much the same thing. Once the pit stops had worked themselves through, it was Michael Broznesky who found himself well positioned in relation to Miguel Ramos. It's Passim Lathoras, then moved through to the head of the field past Duncan Cameron. Shortly afterwards, Ramos was able to find a way past 2, then couldn't really close in on Lathoras, and up into third place came Raffaele Gianmaria. It was a great scrap then between Duncan Cameron and Michael Broznesky, which was decided in favour of Broznesky, but then the Kessel driver retiring with a tyre failure. As ever, one of the stars of the race was Jose Perez Ricard, flying through to eventually finish in 4th. But it was Passim Lathoras who scored his maiden outright race victory in the International GTOpen alongside Michele Rugolo, delight for the AF Course team. Second place once more for Teo Martin Motorsport, Alvaro Perez and Miguel Ramos, with Raffaele Gianmaria and Ezekiel Perez-Compenac, again for AF Course, completing the podium. So lots of very happy drivers about to be announced on to the rostrum. Enjoying the opportunity to cool down a little bit in the sunshine. Rehydrate as into third place then for Ezekiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Gianmaria. To the applause of the AF Course mechanics. Runners up, Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Perez. They go into Estoril, sharing the championship lead with Michele Rugolo and Passin Lathoras. Victorious team today, AF Course. Italian national anthem ringing out in honour of the victorious AF Course team. So we're about to move into the presentation of the trophies. The International GTOpen reconvenes in a fortnight's time at the Estoril circuit in Portugal. Our first visit to Estoril quite some time for the GTOpen, but a very firm favourite of the drivers. Really challenging circuit, so do make sure that you join us for all the action from Estoril as title fighters go off to the best possible start this weekend in Paul Ricard. The trophies just about presented. The drivers will then be posing for the photos before they let rip with the champagne, which means it's time for myself, Ben Evans, to say thanks very much for joining us in Paul Ricard this weekend. Hope you've enjoyed the action, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time in Estoril.